we're going to really be speaking to Russ about all things Gold Star, past, present, and future. Really from his unique perspective. Time is limited, so let's get started. Hey, Russ.
How's it going, David?
Oh, it's really, really great. Thanks for joining us here, and thanks for sharing with us. As you know, this is at the NAM experience, so we've got people viewing this all over the place and all over the world, actually. So this should be a lot of fun. So it's definitely an honor to have you here with us, and thank you for taking the time to join us. Um,
Yes, sir.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is the first time I've made it to NAM on the West Coast, be it
Mm.
virtually. I mean, this is the first time, so I'm claiming this as a win. I've always
Well,
wanted to go, so I
we're,
didn't even
we're
have to
real
get out of my bedroom slippers.
We're glad to have you. We see you at the Summer Nam all the time, but it's good to share you with the West Coast in any way we can. We're really, really honored. Uh, and so I guess let's begin talking about one of the things that interests a lot of the banjo players is
You
you
want
know
more audio?
you as a young player. What brought you to Gold Star? What
Mhm.
brought it to your attention as a young player?
Well, the whole thing with Gold Star, the relationship started in the back of Hank Janney's music store, the Arrow Horse in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, with probably one of your biggest artists, Tom Adams. I went to take lessons from him when I was a little kid. Probably would have been 13, maybe 14 years old. I definitely was not driving it. I know that. And my father took me to see him to kind of fix some things with my right hand. And I was playing one of the banjos my father built, and Tom had this Gibson looking banjo, but it didn't say Gibson, and I had no idea what it was. And he said, "Here, you want to try it?" And he passed it across, and I got to play it, and I was kind of hooked from go. And then I just started, looking back through his career and realized that he had basically played this one instrument for the majority of it, for everything. Um,
The Johnson Mountain
and
Boys.
yeah,
Yeah,
Johnson Mountain Boys, Rhonda Vincent, everywhere.
yeah.
Everywhere that you see and hear Tom Adams, Blue Highway, he's playing that 81 Reef.
Mm,
So
mm.
it's all over the place. And then, by that point, curiosity started taking root. And then there was a very clear realization that you could have something that sounded that good to be used on all these really monumental projects that didn't cost as much as a house. And so there was this obtainability, and then it's completely snowballed from there.
Well, if that background is what I think it is, then it looks like for you it certainly has
Yeah.
snowballed. So we're real glad of that. Well, you mentioned Tom Adams.
Yeah.
He was certainly one of the early really adopters of it. There were a number of them in those days.
Mm-hmm.
You probably could name yourself. We dabbled with Ralph Stanley making archtop banjos.
Yes.
So I'm sure you've heard and probably even run across a number of those as you've
Mm-hmm.
found them over the years. Uh, you mentioned, Tom. Who would have been maybe some of the other banjo players you looked to after he kind of wet the whistle, so to speak? What
Right.
happened? Where'd you go?
Oh, all over creation. I've my true north for banjo is Earl. That will always be my true north. But I have listened to just about every player you can possibly try to list and think of. I love the melodic style. I love progressive. I love what Bela has done with the instrument. Everything. I love this instrument. I don't really care who's got a hold of one. I'm just so just hopelessly addicted to them. I mean, my father was a builder, so I've always been surrounded by banjos.
Mm, mm,
But
mm, mm.
you know, so with the Gold Star, it started with Tom. Chris Warner is another big one,
Mm.
and was one of your largest dealers on the East Coast. Who actually, Chris had his shop in Hanover, Pennsylvania, that sold Tom his first Gold Star. I bought my first 1981 Gold Star JD Crow
Ooh.
through Chris later on. And so Chris was another big one. Um, JD Crow.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
bunch of different good players.
Well, so you mentioned that JD Crow, and you
Hmm.
pointed back twice. You know, so what is that back there?
So that is JD Crow model. That's an 81, and that is serial number 5. And I had been on the hunt ever since I left the Arrow Horse and that first lesson with Tom. I'd been on the hunt for one, but I wanted an old one and I wanted a clean one, and nothing was really popping up. And I was at a friend's graduation party, and Chris Warner showed up and tapped me on the shoulder, and he knew that I was hunting an old GS, and he just said, "I have exactly what you need." And I said, "Do you now?" So we went over to his house the next day, and I saw it, and he actually let me take it. I hadn't purchased it yet, and he let me take it out for a week to play with Redline to see if it would work or not. And I ended up buying it in the middle of that trip because I saw JD Crow at that festival, and I had a Sharpie, and I didn't think about it. I just wanted him to sign it again. So he signed the inside of the resonator, and then I realized, oh crap, I've altered this thing that is not mine yet. Well, I guess that clinches it. I'm buying it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
And that banjo has been my main instrument for almost 11 years now. And the thing I love about it, and I have a lot of fabulous banjos, a lot of other fabulous gold stars, but that one, for whatever reason, it's like the only way I can think to describe it to people is it's like a Marine's haircut. It will never change. It doesn't care what elevation, what temperature, what humidity. It's just rock solid. It sounds killer, and it'll never change. It's just so dependable, and it's great. With the challenges of being in a traveling working band, that the rest of your day might go pretty rough, but that is the one thing that you never have to worry about. It's really reassuring.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Well, we try to. I guess we try to do that in all the models we make. Even today, I think we try to aim for that idea that you're going to go for it. It's going to perform, and it didn't matter how you wanted to perform with it or what price point it was or whatnot. It was gonna do the job. And that gets me to that interesting point you said it's your road banjo. Well, what are those guys? This idea that it has to be one brand or another, or let's say if it's the sub $100,000 instrument, it's not as good as the one maybe Ricky's playing that night, or how does that all shape up? Because from what I've seen, it's punishing us in the audience in a beautiful way. It's so powerful. Right. What do they say?
Well, it took a while to win these people over because people listen with their eyes and they look with their ears. It's completely reversed from logic. If it sounds good, play it. I really don't, I don't care what the tone ring is or if it even has a tone ring. If it sounds good, play it. And that should be your first directive. So it's taken a little bit for people, there's like this turnoff almost, and people will come up afterwards, at least in the beginning. What year's your Granada? Well, it's not a Granada. Well, what year is it? 81. They didn't make a Granada in 81. And then you've lost them because it doesn't say Gibson. They loved it up until that point. But I mean, people are finally starting to come around that, this is not some crazy notion that you can have a fabulous instrument that will not drain you and you're not going to have to worry about it, and
it does the job. Yeah. Well, then speaking of that, you're on the road with guys playing vintage instruments of immeasurable value. Your instruments are protected and safe, I'm sure. The idea that you've been able to take even some of the newer models out and test run them and see how they perform, they've done favorably as well. From what
they've done great.
Speaking of that. What's that in your hand, by the way?
So this is actually, if you go on the Saga's website and you look at the new banjos, this is the actual wreath that you will find pictured on the website for this model. This came about at NAMM in Nashville a few years ago. So this is a brand new GF100 wreath pattern, mahogany, nickel, 20 hole. And it's a fantastic banjo. I absolutely love this thing to pieces. Because I don't want to speak too loudly because that thing's going to get mad. I mean, the wreath is kind of like my first love because that's Tom's Excalibur. So I've always,
Mm,
really, really been fond of this model. So
mm, mm,
it's
mm,
it's a heck of a good banjo, is what it is.
mm. Well, it's
And
interesting you point out the pattern, the wreath, that
mhm,
you like that, and then Tom liked that one, you
right,
know. Well, is that something that kind of, talk because that line you're really introducing a new banjo for us, a new pattern,
right,
a
hmm,
reintroduction, not a new one, but a reintroduction, and it's fine. And it's coming off the heels of the JD Crow model we introduced
hmm,
last year. But
yes,
this particular model is available in the Hearts and Flowers, Flying Eagle, and Wreath.
right.
When we talk about that, what does that mean? You told me Tom played a Wreath. I kind of get why you like that one, but
Hmm.
what does that all mean to people from if they're looking for a banjo?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I think when you ask that question is, it gives you a chance to emulate your heroes and to just live out, this desire to be like play like them, be like them. So whenever I pick up a Gold Star wreath, my brain immediately switches to Tom Adams mode, and because they all sound great. So then when you look in the mirror, playing in your bathroom, and don't kid yourself, we all do that because it sounds great. And you're looking in the mirror, and then you see this physical representation, and then it helps get you even further into that mindset, and then you pick up, a banjo with the Hearts and Flowers, and then all of a sudden, it's Earl Scruggs, or you pick up a banjo with a Flying Eagle, and you're JD Crow,
Mm-hmm. Which is
in your
on the
mind's eye.
which is you have the JD model there, and I believe
Mm-hmm.
the JD Bluegrass album banjo has a pattern
Yeah,
that's unique to specifically that particular banjo, and that's a whole other story, and we'll have a class on that. I know there's one of the people joining in this meeting that would have a lot to say on that, and someday
yes,
we'll twist their arm to give us more on that when we have more time with this. But I think there's a lot of great that what that shows is a history that we have, and
right.
and I guess one of the points I wanted to point out about the idea of Ricky and the gang in your band playing those vintage instruments, that old gold one back there,
Mm-hmm.
that is 81, right? Which is sort of
Yep.
kind of leaning, kind of brings us to a point where gold stars are actually kind of appearing as new vintage in a weird way.
They
And
are.
people define vintage differently. If I ask George Gruen, he'll say something else.
Right.
If we talk about our timeline of history and we think about what vintage means to us as
Yeah.
a gold star, that's pretty early vintage. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, and to that end, that old gold star, you can't even find those. You can't. They're hard to come by, and if you do,
Yep.
their values are twice or more than what they were back in those days. And
And
I guess,
continuing to climb.
yeah, and I think that's kudos to the designs and the original plan we had,
Yeah.
and honestly, your assistance at getting it out there with Tom and Chris
Mm-hmm.
and Bella and Ralph, and being able to just do it because it sounds good and take it from
Yeah.
there, you know.
Yeah.
So I guess let's see.
You have the same feeling?
That's kind of the past. That's kind of talking about the past of Gold Star and how you and Gold Star connected.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked a little bit about the future with our new models,
Right.
the wreath, the Flying Eagle, the Hearts and Flowers, which you'll find on
Mm-hmm.
our Saga website. We encourage you to do that, learn more about it, reach out to us, we'll fill you in. But what's and that's the future for Gold Star. There's so many
Yeah.
great things in the future for Gold Star, and we can talk about our open back designs for old timey music. But
Right.
and we can do that. But let me ask you this: what's the future for Russ? We all
Oh,
know
man.
it's been an interesting year. And the last I saw you, Russ, was March, probably March maybe 13th or 12th. I don't remember exactly the day. But then
10th.
they locked, yeah, March 10th, right? And then they locked the United
Everything
States
down.
down. So I got to see you play basically one of your last shows
Yep.
with Ricky for the year.
Right.
So, and
You guys
that's
were
gotta
great
be
that
weird.
night.
Oh, it was great. Lee was there. Yeah. So what is on the horizon for you given these interesting challenges?
Well, first and foremost, it's just the hope that we get back out on the road soon because, this isn't just something that we do just because, hey, it's fun. But I mean, everybody that's in our band and everybody that's in most of the bands that you go see, this is our life's passion and the reason why we're here breathing air. It's not just collect a paycheck and go home. So
yeah, it's deeper.
Wanting to get,
yeah. Sorry, I was gonna say you're necessary people in the world. You should have your vaccination shots. I think.
Yeah, just wanting to go back to work because the room that you see me sitting in here has been my world for almost the last 365 days, and these banjos have been a giant part of me staying sane. So I've been really pushing the online brand, the 81 Crow brand, and trying to get as much positive content out to folks globally as possibly that I can do out of this little space. And like I said, just having good banjos to play, whether it's in front of a video camera or we played the stadium downtown a few years ago in front of 81,000 people. I mean, it's just nice to have something good to depend on, and it's enjoyable for me. It's enjoyable for everybody. But just right now, playing music again is one of the big ones for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Russ, one of the things hey, I see it sitting there with that wreath, and you were saying when you get a banjo that has a particular inlay pattern, and you first see it, you look in the mirror there when you're in the bathroom getting the good vibes. So when you do play the wreath banjo and you think of Tom Adams, what do you play? Let's hear what you'd play.
Oh man, let's see here, Tom. If I were to think of Tom, let's see if I can even get through this. Tom's variation on Fireball Mel.
Yeah, there you go.
It's got that old growl there, doesn't it?
It does. I love how he messes with the timing like no one else I've ever heard. I mean, when you think he's going to stop, he keeps going. But he has a right hand unlike any other human being alive. He embodies Earl Scruggs, but then he does his own thing, and it's just marvelous. So I hope I can play like him when I grow up at some point. It's going to take a while.
Can you do that? Can you do that with that JD model back there? Richard, that was beautiful. I can only imagine what it'll sound if he's channeling the patterns.
I mean, that's the one question, if they're all going to be in tune, because it's a room full of banjos. Heaven help me.
Yeah, right.
Almost in tune. Go Banjos.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Hey, Richard, can I ask you a question that might help us to fill in a few blanks from what Russ was talking about early on? It'd be interesting if you didn't mind. How did Tom and Chris get in the picture? Is it something that you could sum up in like 5 minutes, or is it a whole other great thing?
Chris was of course the first one. You preceded Tom because Chris was Tom's banjo teacher, I think, back at that time. So when we first started with Gold Star, I think Tom was pretty young and probably wouldn't have had the banjo right away. But Chris was one of the first people that recognized that maybe we had something going there. It was Chris Warner that did it out in the D.C. area, and then down south in Greenville, it was Al Osteen who played with Randall Collins, Curtis Blackwell, and the Dixie Bluegrass Boys, and I had their album, and so it was one of the it was kind of a cult favorite back at that time, and at least for me, my cult, and when I heard Al Osteen was buying our banjos, I was just flabbergasted, because he was a real powerhouse picker. And so those two guys, between the two of them, and there were a number of shops throughout the East Coast and the South, and in fact all over the country that were selling them, but nobody sold more than those two guys. They just there's that famous album cover there of Chris with banjos spread out just like it's like a hand in a poker table. They were just out there. I don't know how many of them were in that picture, but it was really amazing. And Chris Warner, of course, Jimmy Martin, and so I was real familiar with him too when that happened. And it was really, like the Swede is saying there. It was real nice to be able to meet a lot of the guys that had influenced my playing, and guys that I really looked up to and really respected as musicians, and that they were attracted to something we put together. It was a real great honor, and not to mention the fact that we developed friendships that lasted throughout all these years too.
Seems like the timing was really right. We didn't really go deep into this, but the concept of that, perhaps when you met with Chris and hooked up with those guys, Gold Stars, let's say late 70s, 75, 6, 7, somewhere in there. You'll know better. I'm just going to throw that out. The idea that what was happening in the market then and what was available was, I don't think that there was a lot of really awesome banjos in a production sense made, and I don't believe that vintage had fully become what vintage is today. You would know better, folks who were dabbling then, but today it's a whole other realm. But now, could that have been part of it, Richard? Was that, like they say, timing is everything?
Well, timing, that's what JD says. It's all timing. and I think he's right, But that was an era that when you've got your feet kind of set in the cement of this century, it's hard to think back of those days and remember what it was like. But the fact is there was not the information available about the banjos or the instruments, the vintage instruments at that time that you've got now. There was no internet to check out things and really readily pull information out almost instantly. There was just nobody to find out from, because the people that were really into the vintage instruments, it was really in their best interest to keep the information close to themselves, because they were looking for this stuff and they didn't want to tip anybody off that, hey, maybe there's something out there. So people like George Goulden and maybe Harry West and guys like that were going around trying to ferret out these old instruments, the last thing that they wanted to do was to feed the beast of competition and having to be run into all other people at the same time. So there were no books written, even for learning to play the banjo before the Skaggs book came out. I mean, what do you do? I mean, what you do is you do what I did. You get a 45 RPM record or 33 and you turn it down to 16 and you try to, it really does wonder for your singing though, doesn't it, Chris? Yeah,
Yeah,
you notice that you sing a little bit lower,
There you go. There you go.
Right.
There you go. Well, that's
It
great.
affects the banjo playing too. I don't know, but that was the way you learned how to play back at that time. And the instruments themselves were a mystery. I remember back in Michigan, guys, that were playing in bands back there. They'd usually be trying to sell it, and well, I don't know if it's really pre-war. There's been a lot of guys told me it probably is. And,
Yeah.
I remember getting the bum's rush from the Country Boys back there, Clarence and Roland White and Kentucky Colonels when I saw their band, and their banjo player was trying to sell me his banjo, which was I later found out was probably about a mid-50s. It's one of those bow tie banjos.
That's
Billy
interesting
Ray.
there.
Anyway, yeah, the knowledge just wasn't there, and it wasn't that really people were trying to deceive anybody else. They really just didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to say one point before we continue, but because Nam is going to wrap this up, but we're going to keep the conversation going a little longer because we can. And if y'all want to go, if you're all viewing across the world, around the world, you can see this video continuing to play as it is real time on our Saga Music Videos YouTube channel. So go there and you'll see it. Nam's going to turn it off, but it'll be recorded for future view. So anyway, I apologize, Richard. Let's keep going as long as we feel comfortable, and then we'll sum it up and let people get to the end of the show meetings at the local bar, wherever that is in the NAM sense, the virtual NAM world. Yeah. So okay. So well, in keeping with what you were saying about the timing, I think the great thing that we were able to do with the Gold Star Russ, and that you've been successful at proving, is that no matter when you use these, where you use them, and who uses them, they perform at the highest levels. But
Yes.
anyone can get one. Anyone can
Right.
afford it, and that's kind of an interesting concept, because we talk vintage, and that could be a lot of money for people, and it seems like you just don't need to do that. And I'm not sure that the point behind it of making a good instrument is to make as expensive as it can be, therefore it is good. And so we've always tried to combine that knowledge and history that Richard was talking about, and beyond that I can even imagine, into something that has way more value than people may expect. So for those who think, what was that you said? Think with their eyes and listen with or think with their ears and listen with their eyes. I remember how you put it. But I think the point being is that if you just do what music's meant to be, play and listen, you can't go wrong. You really can't.
No, you truly cannot. And I mean, there's a peace of mind of, like I said, this thing will always perform. I mean, the largest crowd that this particular banjo that I'm holding has ever performed in front of was a live television broadcast for the CMA Awards show, and that went out to 10 million people live on ABC.
Thank you for the advertisement.
Thank you for building a dependable banjo. And
thank you, great. Richard.
But thank you, Richard. But for a brief period, I had the opportunity to, to get an old Gibson and just see what that's like. And it was cool, but it was terrifying at the same time, because you have this object that, at that point was almost 92 years old and completely original. And it was just like you had this almost like a sense of fear, basically, of, why is that guy close to my case? Why, just a constant fear. And I mean, when you're playing it, it's great, but I don't, my father has always talked about, you don't want your objects to control you. I mean, you don't want to be afraid of it. So enter something into the market that delivers everything that you could ever possibly want to achieve musically, but it's, it's not going to run your life. You're not, constantly in fear over what's going to happen to it. I can show up at bus call with a good case and put this underneath the bus and not think about it until we're at the hotel. I don't have to worry. It's just, there's so much peace of mind with this instrument, on stage, off stage. It's, it's a wonderful thing. So,
and I'd imagine if anybody was to right now bump that off the stage, that'd be fighting words, or bump it off the stand. So, like you treat it as though it may be the $1 million beast, and that's to me. I think that's what makes a good instrument, is when you play one that makes you feel that way.
Yeah.
And it could be a 5. It could be, it just makes you feel, and
right.
I think Gold Star gives you that chance.
It does.
Yeah. Richard, is there anything that you might feel like the people out there in the banjo land might want to consider, sort of outside of the topics we're talking about, or that correlates, or something we've missed? Your perspective, Gold Star, in a nutshell. Richard, I'm not sure if you have any final thoughts or ideas you might want to include into the meeting, that might, your thoughts on what, Gold Star from your perspective in a summation, and then I'll go ahead and sum it all up.
Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to hear Russ pick one more on that 81 crow right there.
Sounds good to me.
I think to let the banjo there do the talking for him, and
that's it.
It'll be all right.
There you go. Good. Well.
All right. Well, we'll see what we can't get through.
All right.
There you go, folks. There you go. That sort of says it all. Well, listen, I am going to sum it up, folks. There's lots more to do at the Dam, I'm sure. So have a good rest of the show. But thanks for all who joined us for this discussion with Russ. I definitely want to remind you that the session will be presented in its entirety on our Saga Music Video site and on the NAM's website, I believe, through February. So if there's something you missed, you can go back and check it out. We don't want that to happen to you. So that's a wrap. And in the meantime, keep on picking, everybody out there. And we'll see you out on the road. To learn more about Saga products, please visit sagamusic.com and chat with us. We'd love to meet you and tell you more about the Gold Star, or all about our other great products. And so thank you again, and have a great show, everybody. Take care. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you, guys.
Haley.